Gonna record starting now, and we are off for the Marcus Hour. Sorry we could only limit it to an hour, but we do thank everyone for being here on a Friday. It's the first installment of the Marcus Hour. We're very excited. We have Alcock and Marcus as the firm that Stephen and I are both a part of. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jake Marcus, licensed to practice in Florida and Massachusetts. I've been practicing for about 6 years. We wanted to, or also we have Stephen Marcus. His reputation does precede him for the New England chapter of condominium law. But I'm actually going to start a PowerPoint as well, just so we have visual aids throughout the hour. So let's see if I can get this started. Let me share the screen.
Can you make me skinnier and with more hair?
Yeah, I could try that. I might move in and out of the share screen for a bit just to check the chat, but that's our faces. Stephen, you look great. We wanted to give a quick shout out to CAI, Community Association Institute. It's the premier organization for HOA and condo living, and we recommend getting involved with CAI. You can, for the New England chapter, you can go to www.caine.org, and they have plenty of great information. Alcock and Marcus was just there, or at a yearly conference in January in New Orleans. Norm Orban, Ed Alcock, and myself were out there. It's a great event put on by the people there. As to our Marcus Hour, everyone submitted really good questions. If you still have questions, you can email us, but also utilize the chat function just to submit any questions there. And so we have our emails right there. You can email Stephen or I. And today, we're going to try to get to all the questions, but unfortunately, our happy hour is only limited to an hour. So each question, honestly, could have been its own topic, and we're just going to try to kind of rifle through it. But we're excited to be here, provide any value we can. Stephen, yes?
And we had pre-seminar 16 or 17 questions. So we can only give broad strokes even to that many questions, but so those are the ones we're going to try to get to today. But for any we don't get to, and if you put it in the chat, questions that you have, you're going to get something tomorrow thanking you for attending. But next week, Jake and I will try to come up with something that we email out to all the attendees with answers to other questions that you may have. And Jake can't listen to this, but for those who ask questions pre-seminar, again, since it's broad strokes and we don't have much time to answer, feel free to call me for free for 15 or 20 minutes to talk a little more about the great questions that people submitted before this program.
No, I mean, no, we actually encourage as many questions as we can. If you go to our website and you check Stephen's bio, we want to provide good service. If it's free service, then that's what we want to be able to help. We're here to help. We're here to give advice. And just a little bit about our firm. We have licensed attorneys in Massachusetts, Florida, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Maine. And we've been up and running for about 6 months, starting in February. But Stephen's been practicing for a bit. Ed has 28 years experience. Ellen Shapiro, 40 plus years experience. Norm, 10 years experience. Sean's roughly my age as well, so around the six year mark. And we're excited to be up and running, be moving along. Check out our website. And Stephen, anything you want to say about yourself?
No, but we're limited on time, so why don't you start firing the questions?
I agree. Let's get to it. All right.
Okay, let's start off on a tangent with who is my favorite football team. Based on the banner behind Jake's neck head, it's the New England Patriots. Who are they playing on Sunday?
Well, yeah, that's unfortunate. That was always our retort this time of year when people would say, "Oh, the Dolphins are better. Oh, the Bills are better." I'm like, "Oh, who they playing this weekend? Who they
Okay, that
playing
might
in January? Oh, it's the Patriots." But yeah, here's my prediction for the game. Eagles are going to beat the Chiefs. I think it's going to be a close one, 3-point game, high scoring, 31-30, Eagles.
And then my second favorite team, and they became so very recently, is the Buffalo Bills because of the amazing DeMar Hamlin, who last night received a couple of awards in Phoenix pre-Super Bowl. He's the player who's hot stopped in the middle of the game against Cincinnati. But let's go right into the real questions.
You don't think that's a real question?
Yeah, that's a real question. But let
Oh,
me
we'll get to it.
okay, let me get into there's a great question about liability insurance post Surfside. Surfside was the building in Surfside near Miami, the condominium that collapsed, killing 98 people. It was incredibly tragic and took about a minute or two for the entire building to crumble. A board member up here has asked, how much insurance should we have? What kinds of insurance? And should I be getting my own insurance that I pay for myself? So that everybody doesn't panic, I know of no case or circumstances in Massachusetts where condominium association or unit owners had to pay above the insurance limits of a policy. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. And it's important to note that in Surfside, the condominium next door, because there was a claim that the vibrations from the building might have caused the collapse of Champlain Tower South. The building next door's insurer for the condominium, this is commercial general liability insurance, paid $29 million. I don't know how many associations that have that amount of coverage, but that's the amount that was paid just by them. I'm told that the Champlain Tower South might have paid $1 million on directors and officers. Directors and officers typically excludes bodily injury and property damage, but commercial general liability includes those, and the association should consider an umbrella policy and over the CGL and DNO, but talk to a good insurance agent. There are about 6 or 7 who are superb in the area. And I don't know whether the answer is 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, or 100 million, but Surfside is scary. The person also asked about self-paid insurance. I'm different, but I have a personal umbrella policy for nonprofits that I serve on the amount of $10 million. I assume I'm the only one in the world who has that. I'm probably also one of the rare people in Massachusetts who has earthquake insurance. But take Surfside seriously. They can be devastating events that will happen that have significant insurance repercussions, and you do not want to find out after the fact that you don't have sufficient kinds and amounts of insurance. Jake?
Great. Yep. And actually, so we're going to get to the next question, which ties right into, post Surfside issues. The question is about reserve accounts. What are the laws on maintaining year-over-year reserve levels and contributions? So this has become a extremely hot topic in Florida. Senate Bill 4D to require law in Florida on reserve studies and funding. There's several states that require it for both reserve studies and funding. So you have to maintain an account as well as conduct either annual studies or periodic studies on the reserve accounts. So Florida's a big first mover in this area. And yeah, it's again, right off of what Stephen was talking about, this stems directly from Surfside. Also has the Senate Bill 4D also has language related to structural inspection requirements. And yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about Florida's requirements, insurance issues going on. And yeah, it's gonna be big. But as far as the reserve accounts, the law in the states that we practice in, it's more elective measures. Whereas Florida is about to have actual substantive requirements. So for example, in Massachusetts, the law states adequate replacement of reserve funds. Pretty unclear what that means. Adequate. It's more of a term of art than an actual amount or specific requirement. But I think what we're about to see in the next few years in the wake of Florida's law, other states kind of jumping onto the reserve studies and funding, states are going to end up following Florida. So what we can suggest, because there's not really specific law in any one state, it's more of a best practices standard. There's a few different things you can do in your communities. Conduct a reserve study. You could even do this by possibly subdividing a board. It's not uncommon to do that just generally with different tasks across the association. So if you can kind of subdivide and task a certain group with a subcommittee to focus on funding, it's not a bad idea. As Stephen mentioned, 21 million, you don't want to be scrambling after the event. I mean, granted, Surfside is a very rare event. Everyone in the community is in the legal condo and HOA community is doing things to prevent this from happening, figure out how to, go best about it. And the Florida laws actually tie right into that with inspection requirements, reserve requirements. But you want to start today. A lot of people may say, why am I putting money into events that could happen years down the road? What's the point of a reserve account? I want to see renovations today. I want to work on what's here today. I don't see the actual value in putting things away for a rainy day. You want to start funding the reserve account today. You want to be doing the things prophylactically to make sure that you're not scrambling. There's actually just in Florida this past week, a board is charging every unit owner $175K for the year. Made news. It's a big story, but you'd rather be planning in advance and be financially healthy rather than trying to scramble and figure out what to do from there. So start today. Start putting into your reserve account. Really focus on making that a priority, and see where you can go from there. Consult with experts. You want to consult with engineer, architect, any other suitable experts. Periodic reviews of the reserve account is also a good idea and a best practice. And yeah, similar with consulting with experts, preventative measures, maintenance of the actual property, maintenance of the common areas. Everyone, you want to keep an eye on this type of stuff. It can creep up on you. Sometimes it's hidden. You want to get the experts in. You want to be looking. You want to be trying to prevent it basically going bankrupt. You want to prevent any of these issues. So you'd rather have a rainy day fund than scramble with special assessments. We actually have an article coming out in our newsletter where we analogize reserve accounts to football, actually. believe it or not. And we said in 2000, how could the Patriots had Drew Bledsoe? They just made him the most highly paid quarterback in the NFL. He was a first overall pick. And he went down with a almost career-ending injury. What was the Patriots reserve account at that point? It was Tom Brady. No one knew what they had, but maybe Bill Belichick did, maybe Robert Kraft did. And that's a healthy reserve account. Now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a Super Bowl with Brady. Kind of flip side, let's see what they have for their reserve account. So yeah, you want to be looking out for the future. Obviously there's expenses that come up in the day-to-day, but always be preparing for the future. And again, just going back to the general laws, Florida is now requiring it. There's people who are pushing back. They think it's too soon for Senate Bill 4D to be implemented into Chapter 718 of Florida Condo Act. Might make sense, but and that'll be the end of 2024. But other states are going to follow suit. It's inevitable, and just as a best practice, even if there's not certain legal requirements, there's best practices that you can follow. Again, we have our emails there. Contact us, because it is a case-by-case thing and does depend on the association.
Two quick points, and then we'll move on to the next question, if that's okay, Jake.
Go
One
ahead.
is that there are very good lenders in who serve Massachusetts who do association loans. So if you get an engineering study and it shows significant amounts that are needed, there are several lenders who will do that, and a couple of them will go out 25 or 30 years on the loan. The other thing is, I saw there's a question on who does reserve studies. When we answer the questions that we sent to all the attendees next week, we will give a few names. I'm now going to speak about developer turnover. There's a question of a owner and a complex being built, and the amenities are not in, the roads aren't finished, clubhouses, everything that they were promised. And the documents say that the developer has control until 100% of the units are complete and perhaps even sold. The answer, at least in Massachusetts, is just because the developer controls the association doesn't mean that you can't bring an action before turnover if there's justification for it, and perhaps bringing even derivatively. In addition, the declarant is probably also the trustee of the association, so has some obligations to the unit owners. So that's another area to look for getting things done. Perhaps the town can help out. There may be bonds that were put up. Turnover in Massachusetts at 100% is legal. There is legislation that is filed that, if it passes, would change that to something like 75% for unit owner transition. So keep an eye on that. We also would want to see the documents, purchase and sale agreements, brochures, to see what you were promised. And there is an obligation on the developer, and he's wearing two hats, so she is wearing two hats as developer and as board member, of having duty of loyalty to you as unit owners, but at the same time having their own self-interest with as developers. Jake, next question.
Well, yeah, and I also just want to add to that, just a general developer turnover. Yeah, it's pretty stringent, and Steve and I were talking about this earlier this week. It's pretty stringent requirements in Massachusetts. In Florida, it's section 718.301. Actually has several different triggering events, and Steve and I were discussing it's we could go through all of them, but there's about eight or nine of them. A bit more consumer friendly and easier to, deal with turnover, and less stringent requirements. And I will get to the next question. The question is, our board is treating bylaws as guidelines, not requirements. Do I take them to court? The short answer is no. Basically, there are other avenues short of court and litigation. And even though we're attorneys and we get paid off of litigation and going to court, we would suggest avoiding litigation. It's costly, it's time consuming for everyone involved, more uncertainty of results. Instead, if this specific issue is going on, we would recommend trying to discuss with the board directly. And just explain your concerns. Explain your concerns. You may want to directly convey exactly what bylaws or provisions you're citing to that you have issues with, and look at that language in the governing documents. There are still disagreements. That's when you come to the attorneys, consult with an attorney, interpret the governing documents. Sometimes it's the difference between shall and may language. But if you're pretty confident in the position, we can take a look. Any other attorneys who specialize in this area can take a look and try to interpret the governing documents accordingly. At that point, short of litigation, usually start with a demand letter, see if you can resolve without court first. If it's still an issue, that's when you may want to consider court, but it's case by case. You don't, I guess it's the American way. You want to come down with an iron fist, file a lawsuit, litigate. There's other avenues. So let's get to the next question.
Okay, this is on record requests. The unit owner, who's also trustee and secretary of the board, lives in a 10-unit condominium. One unit owner owns 3 of the 10 units. Nobody, the manager and the says go to the trustee, the head trustee. The head trustee won't give the person any records. The person is aware that the Massachusetts Condominium Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 183A, at Section 10 has requirements in condominiums for what records unit owners are entitled to in financial statements, etc. I think what the unit owner was also getting to is that the person did not say any provision for, but if we sue, which may not be the wise first step, as Jake said, do they have to pay us a legal fees? Generally, the answer is no in Massachusetts, but if you look at Section 10, there is one paragraph, which I believe is the paragraph on the 120-day financial statements, which I believe, for whatever reason, has after it that if there's a fight in that paragraph over the, I believe, getting the year-end financial statement, that the prevailing party is entitled to legal fees. So there's power and things that you can do. The fact that the laws don't say that you get legal fees, there are remedies, and it may be as simple as a demand letter to the head trustee, and the rest of the trustees could get you the result that you want. Jake?
Great.
Did you mean that?
Yeah, great job. I also just wanted to go, no, I was actually looking at a question. Someone asked, who are the experts for the reserve study? So the reserve study question, what are the laws for maintaining reserve studies? We suggested conducting a reserve study. There's plenty of these vendors out there. One of the companies that I have dealt with is called Reserve Advisors. They have locations throughout the nation. That's just one example of a company. They have locations in Massachusetts, Rhode Island. I think New Hampshire. Don't quote me on that, even though it's being recorded. They do have locations throughout the nation and throughout New England. And they'll come out and they'll do reserve studies at your property. And there's others we could, certainly you don't want to just, you want to look into other options, but there's specialists who specifically look into reserve studies, and they're called reserve advisors. Pretty good company we've dealt with before. But the next question, what is the procedure to change our governing documents to require an odd number of board members rather than a specific number like 5? So this is a pretty broad question. And it's the procedure for just generally changing governing documents is going to actually be largely contingent on the governing documents themselves and state-specific laws. I know in some states, they'll have different rules for increasing versus decreasing the size of the boards. So it may depend on that. The language will vary. Generally, what you're going to see in governing documents is some language that may say that the option to change the number of board members is in the board's discretion, or it could be up to a member vote. Those are the two most common, I would say, ways to change the board members. But it's good regardless. And again, you're gonna have to go back to the governing documents, and perhaps engage an attorney to guide through this process. It could be either in the bylaws or articles of incorporation. But you're gonna want to look at that. That's probably the first place you're going to want to look. And then state specific, if there's any specific things as to increasing versus decreasing the board size. And just as a general kind of point that I wanted to make, some boards consider having staggered terms for the board members. This allows for more continuity, changing of ideas. It can be a good practice, depends on obviously your specific association. But that's not uncommon to have staggered terms for the board members. But yeah, you're going to want to look at the governing documents. That's pretty much what you're going to want to look at. Could be board's discretion, could be a unit member vote. Either way, yeah, you'll want to review that and potentially get interpretation from an attorney. But next question. This one's a fun one.
Stephen's son like his father. This question comes from, I believe, an engineer in New Jersey who also has an office in Massachusetts and other places. And it's a trick question. The true answer is that Jake is not at all like me. Jake, next question.
Well,
maybe we have to go a little rapid fire because
where we at?
We're about halfway through, but I interrupted you. What
Plenty of time, but is that a good thing or bad thing that I'm not like you?
I think the person asking the question believes it's a great thing.
Okay. He doesn't like you.
No, he does.
I'm kidding. Everyone likes Steven. All righty. Has there been any substantive change in attitudes of unit owners and or board members over the last 30 years? This is kind of a tough question for me because 30 years ago I was 3, so it was kind of hard to really see how I don't think in my you can tell me, Steven, I've known you for probably 33 years or so, a little more. Seems longer too. But when I was 3, I don't think I knew anything about the attitudes of unit owners and board members.
You were only in junior college at the time, so no, you didn't.
Okay, but my conjecture of this and what I've seen in my practice is that unfortunately, and I think it's a direct byproduct of the pandemic, attitudes have likely taken a step back, have likely gotten worse, tension has gotten worse. I'd say it's a little bit more contentious. The reason for that, and my kind of opinion on that, And my mentor and partner Ed has also kind of noticed this as well. And I don't want to speak directly for him, but this is at least what I've kind of, gathered. People were in their units all day and at home and had nothing better to do than, oh, my shrubbery is not right. Oh, something's wrong with my window. Oh, the neighbor is causing a scene. Oh, I don't like that neighbor. I'm going to complain about them. They had nothing better to do. They just want to argue, pick fights over little things. We don't, even though we kind of deal with a lot of disputes and that's kind of our practice, we tell people, try to work it out. Use any opportunity. You're going to have more in common than your neighbors than you may think. Try to use, for example, a game of pickleball, which is the fastest growing sport in the world, as a point of camaraderie versus contention. Life's too short to argue about everything, cause a scene over everything. You have to live with these people. Unfortunately, it's part of living in a community association. And we would suggest let's be better. It's probably gotten worse from the pandemic, but there's always a new day. So that's my preaching, I guess, more than legal advice.
And I'll just add, Jake, that that is a very important question. I think CAI has a publication about maybe it's called Be Reasonable with Rules and all that. I think there has been progress, but the person who's asking has been dealing with condominiums for probably 45 years and sort of as an outsider. But it's something, bringing community into associations is something that we're constantly trying to get a better handle on. Let me go into the next question. This person, I actually spoke to them. The question came in like 10 days ago, and it looked like it was really time sensitive. There was a fire, asbestos was found in modest amounts. The insurer is going to cancel coverage, and other insurers will not provide the insurance, or that's the concern, and we need to disclose to our association. The first step I told this person was get an expert on condominium insurance, and I reached out to somebody who said it seems odd that there'd be no market available. So the condominium insurance experts as agents get no more money selling a policy than your crazy uncle who sells insurance does. So there's no reason not to use the best. They think that an insurer would exist. Also bring in an asbestos expert to say exactly what it is that you need, that needs to be done. I think the fire was to one building, and I don't think the asbestos was disturbed in the others. But an expert has to say what has to be done. Once you have a handle on that, you can do two things. One is, again, the association loans. If it's very expensive, reach out to one of the lenders and who lend to associations on the major expenditures. And once you have all the information together, let the unit owners know, because if there's any hazard from the exposure to asbestos, once the fire revealed it, that should be disclosed so that they can take their own precautions. Jake?
Great. So,
was it really?
no, it was terrible.
Okay. Thank you.
It's kind of just habit. As your son, I kind of have to say great every time you do something to kind of puff your feathers. All right, so let's see. What I wanted to also just point out, continue using the chat function. We're going to try to answer those as well.
And the Q and A as well. I see a couple of, Dina will print out both the chat, or say both the chat and the Q and A. So continue asking the questions and we will try to answer them post webinar, hopefully next week, with an email to all who have, all the attendees.
Yeah, we're definitely, we'll answer every single question. It's just a matter of if we get to it today, limited to an hour, or we'll get be in touch in the next week. So continue using that. Also just want to give a shout out to CAI New England. I see Claudette Carini's in here. Remember that CAI is a great resource for all things homeowner association condos nationwide, and a good resource to go to. But to the next question, split unit owners / members. Our association has no board, but has investors. Some residents are content with the situation and some want more say. How should we proceed to satisfy all members? The only issue with this question is, as part of living in a community, you're going to have a very hard time satisfying all members. Factions develop, clicks form, people have opinions. Again, to the last question that I answered, board member or unit owner attitudes, board member attitudes. There's contention. There's going to be issues in communities. You're going to have a hard time satisfying all members. As far as making a decision here, it's going to be some type of voting mechanism, whether it be and basically in compliance with the governing documents or state statute would be most appropriate. So you're going to want to take a look at the basically the voting mechanism and or governing documents and figure out what it would take to make a decision amongst the members. Unanimous vote would be great. I don't know. It's going to be hard to satisfy all members, especially in this situation. Sounds like there's split opinions. So we'll get to the next one.
On the next one, I suspect that this is from a unit owner, and the question basically are there any laws that protect unit owners? And the easiest, obvious answer is that yes, there are plenty of laws that protect unit owners. Every one of them. Under what the Mass Condominium Act requires under 183A are requirements that must be done. I suspect that Massachusetts might have less protections than perhaps other states. I'm going to guess that Florida is pretty well regulated. There may even be an ombudsman or dispute bureau. But I think the real question is, the person is saying, if we sue and we win, are we entitled to legal fees? And generally the law is that if you sue, if there's a lawsuit, both parties pay their own legal fees, unless the statute or a contract specifically says otherwise. That leads to ADR, alternative dispute resolution, and it just seems that on some of these issues, court could be easily avoided, and I would submit that more of these disputes probably should go to a arbitration or mediation procedure to see if they can be resolved without a lawsuit, for the reasons Jake said, in terms of the cost and the years that it takes for cases to be decided. Jake?
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out, if you're looking for specific condo statutes, we do have condo acts on our website under resources. For Florida, it's chapter 718. For Massachusetts, 183. What's up? 183A. Okay, there you go. All righty. Next one, this one Steve and I had some fun with. We have been talking about because it brought us both back to law school. Agency law. Is there a difference between a management contract and an agency contract? For example, can a property manager sign a contract as agent without an actual agency contract? This kind of goes back. So the management agreement, as the participant asked, will be the key document in determining the property manager's rights and obligations. Unfortunately, sometimes a property manager will go out with a vendor, enter an agreement, and this is where it gets a little bit more, interesting. There are different sub areas of agency law: an authority of an agent and property manager, actual authority, express or implied. That means it's in the agreement. That means they're holding themselves out there as an agent for the property. That's fine. We're good there. Apparent authority is the area where it's a little more murky. And this is, the reason Steve and I kind of had a nice laugh about this is because it brings us back to contract law from our first year of law school. When was that for you, Steve?
I think I was in class the year before yours.
That's true. I remember you were always skipping class though. I never saw you there. Anyways, the key areas to look at in agency law are the degree of control. Or control and consent. So those are the two areas to look for. The degree of control given by the association to the property manager, and the level of consent by association for the property manager to act on the association's behalf. Dealing with a third party. So this could deal with past dealings, the ordinary course of business, previous transactions. Those are the key things you're going to want to look for. But generally, you're going to want to delineate the roles and obligations in the management agreement, and that will be the key document relied upon in this. Stephen, anything to add to that, or next question?
No, next question. I probably have, I'm not sure if it's OCD or ADHD, but I don't want to take either of those as humorous, but I reached out to the person with this question as well. If you're not in Cambridge or Boston, you probably likely don't know what either of them is. The first one is the Cambridge ordinance for energy and utility and water usage and reporting requirements by building and repercussions based on those reports. The second one is the ordinance for Boston. But the question really goes beyond simply what do they say. You can Google this, or I think Jake uses Chat GPT and just says 3 words and the paper is written for him. But Google does have the basic information. The problem here is if you're in a condominium and let's say it's separately metered and the unit owner wants to use as much electricity or gas as they want. They want to run the tubs daily, other than measures such as checking for toilet seal leaks of water or hot water heaters, making sure they're replaced before they die out. The unit owners control the units. So I think this group, to their credit, is trying to negotiate or discuss with the City Council of Cambridge how they can make this apply to condominiums where it makes sense, because it's not fair to say if you don't have control over something that you get punished because a few of your unit owners don't mind paying a lot for utilities and water and use excessive amounts. The question that I asked, and I haven't asked CAI, but CAI has Massachusetts LAC, Normally it's on state issues, though they have gotten involved with trash collection and all that. So the question is whether if the person with the question and his or her board and association want, can the CAI Mass LAC team up or assist in any way? And the second question is, are there managers or associations that are on this webinar who are in Boston and Cambridge that perhaps could be on a task force? Again, if this particular condominium association is looking for the strength of having more numbers and people saying that maybe some of these regulations don't make sense. Jake, we have about 15 minutes to go. You're up next.
Yeah, let's do some, let's try and fire through these last few and see if we can get to any tie-ups at the end. I know we have some chat questions. Again, we're gonna try to get to everything today, but we do have quite a few questions in the chat feature, so if we don't get you today, hang tight, we'll get to you in the next week or so.
It would be a miracle if we get past the questions we had submitted prior to the program. So if you're patient with us, I promise you we'll do a thorough job of sending out something next week to attendees with the answers to the Q&A and chat questions. I don't even think with how quickly I can talk that I could answer 22 questions in the time allotted. But we're wasting, but I'm wasting time. So Jake, next question.
Yeah, and yeah, all right, so the next question. Our association eliminated curbside mail delivery, but I submitted a hardship request to the board to receive mail at my door. The board then advised other unit owners of my hardship request. Is that allowed? From the board side, you need to tread very carefully with this type of information, whether it be ADA, reasonable accommodation, service animals, even confidential privacy information. Generally, boards should not disclose members' health conditions, and this unit owner in particular could potentially have a cause of action here. Notably, boards owe fiduciary duties to their members, which bleeds into confidentiality, potential negligence action due to the failure to exercise reasonable precautions necessary to ensure confidential information is not disclosed without authorization. Now, board members have this duty to protect the information you obtain in your role as a board member. So you want to be extremely careful. I see there's a question in the chat about pets. So to answer your question, the question is about certain breeds. You can restrict certain breeds, but again, you just want to be careful with the questions you ask about the disability or reason for the service animal. And that may weigh in more to the pet issue, but that's another thing. And we will get to every answer. We will talk to you directly in the next week and get you good answers. But as far as this question, yeah, if a board is completely disobeying the duty of confidentiality, fiduciary duty, that's an issue. You don't want to disclose members' confidential information. I know in Florida statute, section 718, we had a records request question earlier. If people are submitting records requests and they're requesting certain information under the delineated items that are prohibited from being disclosed to the members making the request is medical records or anything about a member's medical status, etc. If it's a one-off of a board member disobeying confidentiality, the board should consider a formal notice to stop on that board member. If it's the entire board, short of litigation, we would suggest a demand or a cease and desist letter to curtail these breaches, which should be taken very seriously. And yeah, let's get fired through these.
Okay, I'm up next.
Thank you.
You could be thinking, the question I had as you've been answering is, where the hell did you learn all this stuff? you're doing good. Person has a question on solar. It's a question about some unit owners requesting solar. I think it's probably becoming more and more of a type of request. Just like electric vehicle charging stations. And then there's also a question that for some unit owners to get solar to work, they have to remove a bunch of trees, and the board doesn't like that. A couple of things, and the regulations have the strange provision about only every one parcel only gets one customer, or something like that in the DPU regulations. So that's a challenge, but that can probably be fixed with a DPU exemption and a clarification of the regulations. Massachusetts does have a booklet, 43 pages, on condominiums and solar for unit owners. So there's pressure even at a state level on this, but I think there are concerns if somebody gets on a roof and it's a general common element, you don't just have the right, despite what, there's no law that says that there can't be private restrictions on solar. Well, there's constitutional law, right over his teleprompter case, which says that you cannot have a restriction that relates to basically a taking where one owner gets to have the exclusive use of the roof for a solar panel. So, and there are questions with roof warranties and all that, but we should be looking for more ways of making these energy saving things, especially with extraordinarily high utility costs, of figuring out how to make them work. I think that one answer, just like with satellite dishes, is gee, if you put on a central solar system, that might be the answer for the community, but we should look at various answers and then see what the technology is coming, because it keeps getting better. And I've looked at some of these older contracts and they have some provisions about putting a lien on the property, and there are some things that have to be examined, but the goal should be to get this to work. Jake?
Yep. So we got 7 minutes. Let's fire through. Cable services. Can an association board require each unit owner to pay for a new cable service after getting sufficient votes to sign a 7-year cable contract? This is a tough call. And this, we spoke with a member of our firm before this. On one hand, this likely exceeds the board power, but we need a more and this is kind of the catch-all answer, but we need a more detailed review of the governing documents and applicable state laws. If the board got sufficient votes to seek a declaration amendment, then it's possible. Governing documents can be amended for smoking in units, for banning animals in units. So cable may be on that same thrust. It's if it was up to a vote and the members approved, it's part of living in a shared association. Your hand may be tied to require each unit owner. But again, we'd need to take a deeper look at the actual governing documents.
On the final question, this came in around 9 o'clock last night, and it's on temperature regulation, and it's in Massachusetts. It's 10 buildings, but the heating system is central in some ways, but the radiators, I'm told, are part of the unit, and the unit owners control and responsibility. And the issue really is, does the temperature have to be 64 to 68 degrees during winter? where that comes from. And yes, associations are responsible in Massachusetts for complying with it. Is the state sanitary code requires those level and also has a maximum temperature that units can be. Some associations have difficulty because once a year they change from heating to air conditioning and back. And if you get some hot days or cold days, you can end up with unit owners complaining. But the short answer is maybe the radiator, maybe this is the unit owner's problem. If the radiator is the responsibility, we'd have to look at the documents, and the unit owner has to fix that. If it can be fixed at the association level, that's another thing. And then the other question is, if they're maintaining the minimum temperatures and not exceeding the maximum, then it may be okay, even if there are complaints. But obviously, you always want to look at how can you make your homeowners, the residents, more comfortable in their homes. The biggest investment of their lives. They should be able to enjoy them. So, Jake, you're next. So that might have been the last question.
I think it was the last question. But we can, I mean, we have 4 minutes. If we want to kind of, do you want any other remarks? Anything, you know?
Well, I have one, and I've done a lot of webinars and speaking across the country, and but this was a unique experience. And speaking with my son, Jake, and working with my son, Jake. So not to get all mushy, but I've never done this at another seminar with co-speakers, I don't think. But I have to say to Jake, as my co-panelist, that I love you, and you're doing great, and you're a nice boss.
Well, we try our best to keep our employees happy here. So I'm glad to hear that you've been learning a lot. But yeah, no, I this was fun. We, again, as we've been echoing the whole time, continue submitting every question you can. We have our emails, we have our phone number for the firm right there. Submit all the questions you can, and we're going to get to every question in the next week. And
if you want to stay on for another 40 hours, we could plow through them. But we
got quite a few.
Yeah, we have like 37, including what is the capital of North Dakota. I think it might be Bismarck, but I'm not sure.
And we got what is the square root of an isosceles triangle?
That's the Wizard of Oz, and I think the fun fact is the Scarecrow got it wrong, that he didn't cite the theory correctly, but he was the Scarecrow. But in any event, we have
one more question we got, and this actually came up a couple of times in the chat.
Oh, who is winning the Super Bowl?
Absolutely. We did answer it, or I answered it. I don't think you gave a prediction. I said 31-30 Eagles. I think it's going to be a close one. Eagles pull it off. Jalen Hurts Super Bowl, going back to Philly. Fly, Eagles, fly.
So, one friend of mine is president of CAU Insurance in Pennsylvania, which has a great national program. And she's a diehard Phillies fan. So in some ways, I want the Phillies to win. On the other hand, I have friends in Kansas City. I really like Patrick Mahomes. He's been impressive for years. And the only thing I'm concerned about is if the Kelsey brothers' mom isn't devastated with however the game turns out. I think she said she was just going to watch the offense.
How about yeah, that's true. She's got quite the game on her hands. Win-win for her.
Well, she's also the most popular person in Phoenix, it seems. Everybody wants to interview her.
Yeah. Well, it's a unique story. I guess it could have happened if the Bills and Cowboys played with the Diggs brothers, but definitely, I think it's got to be the first of its kind.
Well, now you're talking way over my head.
What's your thoughts on the fan bases of each though? Have you had run-ins with any of them?
I can't say.
Complete the fifth.
Actually, we've had, well, what a shock. We had run-ins with Eagles fans at the NFL hotel bar when Jake was like 15, where an Eagles fan threw a little football at Jake's head at high velocity, but a couple of my friends brought calm, and Patrick's now wife and fiance and his brother was sitting in the row in front of us at a Patriots game against the Chiefs a few years ago. They were standing up. We didn't know who they were. They had red coats. They were standing up. The people behind us were a little older, and they said, well, please, can you make them sit down? And the person working for the sports agent had to come over, and then security put them in the last row so that they could stand as much as they want. But I guess we bring trouble wherever we go. But Jake, we're at 11:01, and
yes,
I have to go line up for free lunch Friday.
Oh yeah, you got a big day ahead of you.
Yes.
Yeah, free lunch Friday in the office. It's a fun way to keep you guys, our employees, entertained.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. We're not gonna, we promised you 11. I can't believe that we actually got through all those questions. As Jake said, we will try to get through the now 45 questions that I'm saying, and get you something next week with answers to that. But in the meantime, you're just going to get something that I think Zoom sends out thanking you for attending. But thank you all. And this was our first shot. So tell us what we were awful at.
Or what. Let us know if we did terrible. Let us know if we did what you liked, what you didn't like. We appreciate any and all feedback. And again, submit any questions to the emails on the screen. Reach out to us directly via telephone. We're going to get to all the questions in the chat, but yeah, as Steven mentioned at the beginning, he likes giving free legal advice apparently. So he's the weak target if you want.
I'm the pro bono department. I do that wherever I go. I sort of love my job. I love condominiums. I have fun with them. I volunteer on a national and state level, and I never learned how to golf. In any event, hope you had fun. Hope you learned a thing or two. Tell us what we missed, and tell us what we could do better. And I'm serious that I think Jake and Orban, who's also a big sports fan, to break things up in a couple of months, to do like a sports hour, whether it's New England based or national. Thank you all, and have a great weekend. Jake, love you. See you in Miami in a few weeks.
You say that to all your panelists?
No, I didn't. And I give you I'd hug it out, but you're too far away.
Yeah.
Okay. Want to call it a wrap?
Yeah, let's call it a wrap. We still have 36 people here, but I think they have better things to do than look at us and listen to us. So we appreciate your attending today, and we will be in touch for those that ask questions, and contact us if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Jake, you want to, are you able to end?
Yeah, let me.
Is it just us?
There's people it's dwindling down now. 15 people left.